Hey, friends. During my debate last week with Dave Paulman on the anonymity of the Gospels on Kyle Whittington's channel, linked in the description down below, Dave and I started talking about the parable that Jesus said about the 100 sextillion grapes. If that doesn't sound familiar, it's because it's not in the Gospels. Dave and I were talking about Papias and whether or not he's reliable. Some people like to point to this parable of the 100 sextillion grapes as evidence that Papias is not reliable. What am I talking about? Well, let's read the story of the 100 sextillion grapes and then discuss after. We find this strange saying attributed to Papias in chapter 33 of book 5 of Against Heresies by Irenaeus. If we scroll down in chapter 33 to paragraph 3, it starts with the blessing of Isaac. We scroll down a little bit and we will find a story about Jesus and grapes. As the elders who saw John, the disciple of the Lord, related that they had heard from him how the Lord used to teach in regard to these times, and say, the days will come in which vines shall grow, each having 10,000 branches, and in each branch 10,000 twigs, and in each true twig 10,000 shoots, and in each one of the shoots 10,000 dusters, and on every one of the clusters 10,000 grapes, and every grape, when pressed, will give 25 meters of wine. And when any one of the saints shall lay hold of a cluster, another shall cry out, I am a better cluster, take me, bless the Lord through me. In like manner, the Lord declared that a grain of wheat would produce 10,000 ears, and that every ear should have 10,000 grains, and every grain would yield 10 pounds of clear, pure, fine flour, and that all other fruit-bearing trees and seeds and grass would produce in similar proportions, and that all animals feeding only on the productions of the earth should in those days become peaceful and harmonious among each other and be in perfect subjugation to man. And then chapter 4 begins, and these things, referring to the statement that was just spoken, are borne witness to in writing by Papias, the hearer of John and a companion of Polycarp in his 4th book. So there's the quote. Do you think that Jesus actually said that? A lot of people seem to think no, but in the debate, Dave and I discussed that it seems like something that Jesus could say. I mean, we have only so many writings that contain the words of Jesus, and Jesus was on this earth for 30 plus years, so he definitely said a ton of things that were never written down. This is written down, within less than 100 years of Jesus's life. So yeah, maybe he did say it. I don't really know. Well, Dr. Bart Ehrman was on a History Valley. He was on History Valley, and I sent in a super chat to ask him the question. I'm going to play that clip here.
Kevin, non-productive. Thank you for your super chat. Do you think that Jesus might have actually said Papias' 100 sextillion grape story? Jesus must have said many things that weren't written down.
Yeah, so I guess in this case it was written down because we have it in Papias. But it's a very good point. Why don't you get later? You can get later gospels of things that are not written down in the other gospels. Scholars have a term for this. Actually, those are called the agrapha. Agrapha is spelled Agrapha, grapha, like in graphite, the thing in your pencil, the thing you write with, and agrapha is something not written. And of course, all of these agrapha are written someplace because otherwise we wouldn't have access to them. So the question is this agraphon singular? Is this agraphon in Papias possibly historical? And it's certainly possibly historical. Yes, it's possibly historical. I have scholar friends who think that why not? Jesus tends to think it's going to be pretty glorious in the future kingdom of God. And so why not? My sense is that Papias would have no way of knowing if Jesus really said it. He said that he learned this from people who knew the disciples of John, the disciple of Jesus. But the other stories that he tells are also problematic. He doesn't seem to have a clear line to authentic sayings of Jesus or authentic events in the life of Jesus. As one example, he tells the story of the death of Judas, but in this case, he doesn't hang himself, as in Matthew, and he doesn't fall head first and splatter all over the ground, as in Acts. In this case, God punishes him for betraying Jesus, and he swells up. He's so enormous that he can't walk down a street. His head won't fit between the buildings of the street. And it goes on to describe how horrible his genitals are. And when he needs to urinate, worms and pus come out. It's really graphic. And eventually he kind of blows up. I mean, I don't know. And so, so it's just, okay, it's possible that that's what really happened. It's possible, but it doesn't seem likely. And I put the same about the Jesus thing where he says that, every vine will have 1,000 branches. Every branch will have 10,000 branches. Will have 10,000 boughs, and every bough will have 10,000 sticks. Every stick will have 10,000 grapes. Every 10,000 clusters. Every cluster will have 10,000 grapes. Every grape will yield 10,000, vats of wine or whatever. It's I don't know. It doesn't seem consistent with the kinds of sayings that you get of Jesus in the New Testament, where you might have 30 and 60, 100-fold yield of wheat, but you don't have, 100 sextillion. So I'm not sure it's really consistent with Jesus' teachings otherwise.
So Bart Ehrman brings up the fact that Papias doesn't seem very reliable because of that Judas story. And I guess here's what I'm thinking now. Papias probably didn't have access to the Gospels as we know them today. Probably not Acts either. I say this because Papias' story about how Judas died is different than the story in Acts and in the Gospels. If Papias had access to Acts and the Gospels, he probably wouldn't have recorded Judas's death story in quite the same way that he did. Additionally, when Papias talks about the Gospel of Mark and Matthew, he never cites from them, which makes me think that Papias just didn't have access to them. If Papias didn't have access to the Gospels, where was he getting this saying of Jesus from? I mean, maybe John told Polycarp, who told Papias, or something like that. Maybe? We kind of have no way of knowing. I think that it's more likely that Jesus said this weird vine thing than Jesus having said something that I could make up. So I'll make up a 9th beatitude right now. Blessed are the charitable, for they shall have charity shown unto them. I made that up. That's the 9th beatitude. Did Jesus ever say that? It sounds like something that Jesus could have said, but there's no record of him saying that until I asserted that he said that right now, 2,000 years after he lived. So did he say that? Probably not. Papias says that Jesus says this weird story about 100 sextillion grapes. Did he say that? I don't know. I mean, within 100 years. So maybe he did. I don't know. I don't know if I'm above 50 or below 50 on this one, to be honest. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that Jesus really said this 100 sextillion grape story? Do you think it matters? My intuition is that it doesn't really matter to anybody whether he said it or not. I just think it's kind of fun to think about. Just a quick one today. Thanks for listening. Check out the debate that I did with Dave if you haven't seen it already. And until next time.